Mr. Oetting, the horizontal review of sales practices that has been completed, for which I understand you have reiterated here today that you are not going to publicly release detailed findings. I sent a letter this morning to you along with several of my colleagues on the committee asking for more information. And I have to say, the reality is that your citing confidential supervisory information is sparse. The OCC has provided public reports on unsafe and unsound banking practices before, namely during the independent foreclosure review after millions of Americans were harmed by unfair and predatory foreclosure practices. In that case, the OCC provided critical information to the public, explaining how mortgage servicers had failed to service distressed mortgage loans and outlined how those institutions would remediate borrowers. I'm the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I understand all about classified information. This isn't classified. This is an effort not to have the ability for the public to understand that the institutions that they are banking at may very well have had the same practices as we've seen before. So, you know, when you were in front of this committee for your confirmation last year, you refused to provide state-by-state information on the number of One West foreclosures in our states. And today, as Comptroller, you refuse to provide information about consumers that have been harmed not only by Wells Fargo, of course we know that, but by Wells Fargo-style sales practices. So I have to ask myself, who are you trying to protect? Who are you trying to protect? Hardworking American families or big banks?
I'm trying to protect American consumers. Well,
you're not doing that when you don't disclose.
Well, first of all, this is not an unsafe and unsound manner. You quoted unsafe and unsound manner, and you may have not been in the room when I gave the statistics, but out of between estimate of 5 to 600 million accounts, we found 20,000 items.
Of those 20,000 too many.
20,000. I would agree with you. 20,000.
Why can't we know who the 20,000 are and what practices took place at those institutions?
This is a regulatory matter. There are MRAs open that we continue to go through. I have publicly said that this was not a systemic issue in the industry, and as we work through the MRAs and clean these issues up, all consumers that, if they were harmed, will receive restitution.
Well, I think that people should know the institutions that they are banking, whether they have these practices, whether they were among the 20,000 who were hurt or those who were not. And unless you know whether an institution was conducting those practices, you won't know whether that's an institution I should be banking with. So you're doing the consumer universe a huge discredit. And you seem to be shilling for the banks. I have to be honest with you. Let me ask you, do you believe, let me go to a different topic, because I could not believe the answers you gave yesterday at the House Financial Services Committee. Are you sitting before this committee telling a Hispanic American that there is no discrimination in this society and that there's no discrimination in mortgage lending?
I did not say that.
Okay. Can you tell me, is there discrimination in mortgage lending?
I believe that there is. I think there is disparate impact that occurs in America. What I said was I had not personally observed it, but many people who
But when you were pressed consistently to say, do you believe it, you didn't give the answer you've given me today. So I'm happy to see that you finally come to the conclusion, whether you have experienced it, seen it, or not, that in fact there is discrimination in the mortgage lending field.
I don't think that comment was right. When I was pressed yesterday, I said that people that I care about, I love, and I have friendships have told me that there is discrimination, and I believe those people.
Will you commit today to retain assessment areas with a local geographical focus under the Community Reinvestment Act, which helps ensure that banks are combating historic redlining and lending in low and moderate income communities?
I think there has to be a new look at assessment areas. I do think that around branches that we have to protect that banks are participating in their low to moderate income communities. But Senator Menendez, my experience in other people's experience is that assessment areas also can restrict investments. And so I just think we need to think through what is an assessment area. We also have financial institutions today that have no branches, but they have customers, and I think we need to think through what are we going to call, what is the assessment area for those institutions?
Let me tell you, I will make sure, along with national leading civil rights groups, that you understand that there is discrimination in our society in this regard, and that you don't water down what limited protections already exist. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.